We are going to start this video on row 3. If you haven't completed row 1 and 2, press pause here and then come right back. Row 1 and 2 are just 2 simple rows of 18 single crochet stitches. So on row 3, we will chain 1 and single crochet in the first 7. Now this is where we will begin our opening curve. I've marked the stitch on my swatch so that we know where we're going to insert our next opening curve stitches. We'll count over 2 and then go 1 row below. And this is the golden stitch that we will use to make that nice opening curve for our infinity symbol. I'm going to go ahead and remove that marker. And we will be doing 3 treble crochet stitches into this one stitch. Now this is similar to a post stitch, but I'm calling it a floating stitch, and you'll see why in a minute. So there's my first floating stitch. I'm going to go ahead and do a second one right above that, but into the same stitch. And now I'm going to do my third. We are working this cable in groups of 3 floating stitches to give it a really nice definition. Okay, so now I have my 3 floating stitches for the opening curve, but we're not done yet. When we work infinity crochet, we never skip stitches on our background unless it's indicated. So what we want to do is we want to go back to where we stopped single crocheting to do those 3 treble stitches, and we want to go ahead and single crochet onto our background. The 2 stitches that we skipped, and then 2 more. So there will be 4 stitches in between this opening curve, which is why we call it a 4-stitch opening curve. Now, to complete the other side of our curve, we're going to go ahead and do 3 more treble crochet floating stitches. But how these are worked, and sometimes if you turn your work slightly, it makes it a little bit easier, is in each one of these floating stitches, we're going to go ahead and do another treble floating stitch into the base. So we have our 1, 2, 3 first floating stitches. Now on this side, we're going to come back and we're going to start with our third, and we're going to do a treble crochet around this one, and then a treble crochet around this one, and then a treble crochet around this one. So we're working from top to bottom and joining those stitches to create an opening curve. So we'll do our treble crochet into the first, and a lot of times I like to go right into this base. And now we're going to do our second, right into that base. Whoop. Can be a little bit tight. And now we're going to do our third right into that base. Okay. Now to complete this row, once again, we are not going to skip any background stitches, and we are going to single crochet in the last 7 stitches in this row. Okay, so row 3 is now complete. And you've made it through one of the hardest parts of learning infinity crochet, which wasn't so bad. As we can see, this opening curve is starting to form. The nice thing about these cables is they are a little bit chunky the more post stitches that we're using at this beginning. So these front float stitches will now just sit like this. When we turn and we work round 4, this is where the magic of popping these stitches really begins. We're going to chain 1. And we're going to single crochet 7. And now this is where we have our next 3 stitches are our front floating stitches. So we are going to truly front float them by skipping them. So we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, and single crochet into the next single crochet stitch by skipping those front float stitches. We'll single crochet 4, and those are the stitches that are in between our front float stitches on the front. And then we've come to our next part where we're going to skip the 1, 2, 3 front float stitches, and we will single crochet into the last 7. Now in every return row from here on out, I may not be putting it into the video. I will simply indicate for these even rows that you will work with skipping the front float stitches. So skip 3 front floats, you'll do more single crochet, and then you'll skip 3 more front float stitches. So at the end of this row, row 4, on our back side, we have 18 single crochet. This is why on some rows we will be increasing our stitches with having the single crochet background, which is going to remain the same stitch count, and then we have our front floats on some rows that just sit. All right, let's step into row 5. We'll chain 1 and single crochet in the first 5. Now we will front float 3 double crochet stitches. These will be worked around our previous floating stitches. So yarn over, find that first floating stitch, go around it, pull up a loop, complete that double crochet, and now we're going to do that again to our second front floating stitch, and again on our third front floating stitch. Now we do not want to skip any stitches on the background, so now we will single crochet 8. Now our next step is to front float 3 double crochet. So we will do that into this set of front float stitches. So we will go back and simply do 3 front floating double crochets. And you're always just working the very next front float stitch that's available in the row. Now without skipping any stitches, we will single crochet in the last 5. So here is row 5. We can really start to see this opening curve take place in our infinity symbol. I'm going to go ahead and tell you to push pause. Work the reverse side, row 6, by skipping all of the front float stitches. So you'll single crochet 5, skip 3 front floats, single crochet 8, skip 3 front floats, and single crochet 5, and then come right back for row 7. Okay, now we are ready for row 7. We will chain 1 and single crochet in the first 4, and once again we will do front float 3 double crochet. Now if your stitches tend to pull a bit too much when you're doing these front floats, or they're too loose, you will either add or take away one of the yarn overs. So say that this stitch was pulling too much and I didn't like the tension on it, then I would yarn over twice to increase the length of this next stitch. But mine are sitting okay, so I'm just going to continue to work the double crochet. Then we are going to single crochet 10, and now we will once again front float 3 double crochet. Right here I'm going to teach you a little bit of a trick though. I find when I work these as post stitches where I'm taking my hook around the entire stitch, the joins just aren't as clean and clear. There tends to be a little bit more of a bump, of a break in this nice smooth front float stitch. So instead of doing it that way, a lot of times I will take my hook through 2 strands instead of around all 3 and continue working the front float double crochet. I don't know if you can see a slight difference there, but there's a little bit less of a little jog right here with that front float stitch by working through 2 strands instead of 3 when you're doing those front float stitches. Then we'll single crochet in the last 4 to now complete row 7. For row 8, once again, we're going to turn and we're going to work this back side by single crocheting 18. And to do that, we will skip those front float stitches. So press pause here and come back for row 9. For row 9, we are simply doing a repeat, actually for row 9 and 10, of rows 5 and 6. So we will single crochet in the first 5. We will front post double crochet 3. And then we will single crochet 8. And then we will front post double crochet 3. And then we will single crochet 5. Go ahead and press pause here and do the even number back side where you skip all the front float stitches and you will only have 18 single crochet stitches, and come back for row 11. I hope at this point you're really starting to see these lines come together and you're getting really excited about the possibilities of the infinity crochet technique. So for row 11, we will chain 1 and single crochet in the first 7. And next we will front float 3 double crochet, and as you can tell, we're bringing those lines back in to come to the center cross of our infinity symbol very soon. And we're going to front float 3 double crochet stitches. And now single crochet 7. All right, go ahead and press pause once again, and on the reverse side we will simply single crochet 18, skipping those front float stitches. Welcome back to row 13. In this row we will be having our front floating stitches touch. We're going to bring the symbol together before we cross. Now this isn't the only way to do crosses. We could simply single crochet this row, come back 2 rows later and do a wide cross right here. However, when we do that, there will be space in between that could catch on little fingers or other items. So for this example, we are going to have the front floating stitches touch before we cross, but it's not the only way to do it. So I just want you aware of that. So for this row 13, we are going to chain 1, and single crochet 9. Now we will do our front float 3 double crochet, and then we're going to repeat that again by going to our next step and doing our front float 3 double crochet again. What this does is it brings together 6 front float stitches. And now we will single crochet 9 because we do not want to skip any stitches on our background. Now when we turn and chain 1 to work row 14, we will single crochet 9, oh, little knot there. And now we're going to skip the next 6 front float stitches. So you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is our next single crochet. So we'll completely skip those 6. Make sure that this crochet is a little bit tighter, not too tight that it makes a pucker, but we just want to make sure that these are being pushed to the front and that there's not a big gap. And now we will complete our row by finishing the rest of the single crochet stitches for a total count of 18 single crochet stitches. And I hope you're noticing on the back, by doing the Infinity Crochet Method, we're leaving out those big gaps that we used to have when we did cabling on the front. We're not having a lot of gaps, and we have a nice smooth back. Let's turn our work and chain 1, and we will go to row 15. This is where we are going to cross our front float stitches. We will single crochet in the first 7. And then this is where some magic's going to happen. We're going to do front float 3 treble crochet. To do this, we're going to skip these 3 front float stitches, and we're going to do these 3 front float stitches first. So I'm going to yarn over twice, and I'm going to insert into the first of this second grouping. So we've skipped 3, and now we're going to do the next 3. And now we are going to go work 4 of our background single crochet stitches. So working a little bit behind what we just did, without skipping any of our background stitches, we want to single crochet 4. And now we are going to go back and work the 3 skipped front float stitches. This one will be a left cross, meaning that the stitches we are going to work are going to go over the front float stitches we just made. If we wanted this to be a right cross, we would simply work under those stitches we just made. But for this, it's a left cross, so we're going to go over and work the 3 front float stitches that we just skipped by doing 3 front float treble crochet stitches. And now we will single crochet in the last 7. And now we can see that we've created our cross. It's kind of cute. Now we'll turn our work and we will do row 16 by chaining 1. And we're going to do exactly what we've been doing before, where we will single crochet 7, skip 3 front float stitches, single crochet 4, skip 3 front float stitches, and single crochet 7. Welcome back to row 17. Now that you're getting to be a pro at this, it's going to be really simple for a little while because row 17 is simply a repeat of row 5 and same 18 is a repeat of row 6. So you've already done this once before. So we will single crochet 5, front float 3, double crochets, now if you just want to do these as post stitches, that's totally fine. I'm kind of a little bit biased against working through the previous floating stitch, but it does take a little bit more finessing. Then we will single crochet 8, front float 3 double crochet, and then we will single crochet in the last 5. Whoop. Now go ahead and turn your work and work row 18 by simply skipping those front float stitches and having 18 single crochet stitches. Welcome to row 19, where we will chain 1 and single crochet into the first 4. Work our front float 3 double crochets, single crochet 10, and now we will front float 3 double crochet again, and then we will single crochet 4. After you've completed this row, go ahead and push pause, work the even number row, skipping the front float stitches and only doing the 18 single crochet, and come right back for row 21. Here we go for row 21. I hope you're getting excited seeing this symbol work up. It's so much fun. So for row 21, we will chain 1, work 5 single crochet, now do front float 3 double crochet, single crochet 8, front float 3 double crochet, and I'm sure you can see that we're doing a lot of repeating of previous rows to get this shape going. So you should be a pro at this point. And then we will single crochet into the last 5. Go ahead and press pause here and work your even row. Like I've said a lot so far, we're going to skip the front float stitches and only do 18 single crochet. Okay, row 23, we are getting close to the end. We will chain 1 and single crochet 7. Then we will do our front float 3 double crochet. Then single crochet 4. Front float 3 double crochet. And then single crochet 7. Go ahead and press pause here to once again complete the even row by skipping those front float stitches. Welcome to row 25. This is where we are going to go ahead and do a closing curve to finish off our infinity symbol. To do this, we will chain 1 and single crochet 9. Now, next we will do our closing curve. This entire series will only count as 1 single crochet stitch. The reason being is once we connect these floating stitches, we will no longer be working them on our continuing rows. We're basically dropping them by closing them. To do this, we will yarn over, and we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 floating stitches. We're going to skip the first 3 floating stitches, and we're going to do a front floating stitch around the 4th float stitch from the previous row. Only we are going to stop with 2 loops on the hook. We're going to yarn over again, and we're going to begin to complete a front floating double crochet to our 3rd floating stitch. Only once again, we are going to stop when we have 2 loops on our hook. So we can kind of see what we've already done so far is we've taken these inside symbol stitches and we've connected them to create a curve at the top, and now they no longer really exist to us. They've closed off. So we're going to go ahead and do that to the next set of stitches. So we will be working with the 2nd and the 5th front float stitch. We will first yarn over and work the 5th front float stitch, leaving 2 loops on our hook. Yarn over again and go ahead and work the 2nd front float stitch, and we are going to once again leave 2 loops on our hook. So now we have joined those lines to close them. We only have 1 more left. We're going to repeat the same steps. We're going to yarn over and go into the 6th front float stitch and work a double crochet, leaving 2 loops on our hook. Yarn over again, and we're going to work our 1st front float stitch, and once again we are going to leave 2 loops on our crochet hook. Okay, so now we've done it. We have closed the top of our curve. Pretty exciting. This is possibly, I feel like, as complicated as this method gets. So now that you have worked 6 front float stitches around and then combined them, you have this really nice popping cable. Now these can be worked with 1 single front float stitch that comes and combines, or 2, and this one we decided to do 3 with 6 in each row and combine them at the top. So really we kind of started with the most complicated, but I wanted you to see how it was done. Anything from here on out is going to feel simple. So if you've made it here, give yourself a pat on the back. This really is fun to do, and if you have to practice at this a couple times with attention, don't worry. That's what most people need to do. Once you nail this down one time, you're good. Feel free to rewind and try it again. Now that we're left with 2 loops on our hook, we're going to truly complete our next stitch. We're going to insert our hook into the next single crochet. We're not going to be skipping any single crochets on the background. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and now we're going to yarn over and pull through all of our loops on our hook, and that right there will count as 1 single crochet. So then we will single crochet 8 to complete our row. And then guess what? On our following row, we don't have any front float stitches to contend with. We've dropped them all. So we will simply single crochet 18. I hope that you can see the value of using Infinity Crochet, because we can pick up and we can drop symbols at any point on our designs that we do. This creates a lot of possibilities. Okay, now that I've completed the final row 26 by simply single crocheting 18, let's take a look at what we've just accomplished. Isn't that beautiful? Now our background stitches, the fun thing about them is by working this infinity crochet this way, our background stitches stay so consistent that it doesn't change our gauge, which is really important for future designing. It's nice to be able to throw a really popping cable line on the front of our design without changing the gauge and without adding any gaps or holes on the back. How beautiful is that back? So I hope you've enjoyed creating this infinity symbol, which, by the way, I'm going to point out one more thing. We created it this way. We started down here and we worked our way up the infinity symbol. However, using this infinity crochet technique, we can actually work the infinity symbol this way if we chose. We would simply start here and work our way up by opening 2. We will cross them and then we will close up here. So the possibilities for creating designs is just endless, and I'm super excited about it. I hope you are excited too. I hope you're excited to see this little infinity swatch work up, feel the pop of the cable, and I hope you continue to join me for some new, innovative, and fun designs.